The year is 2019. I just left my executive chef position at a hotel and started a general manager position at a small-town restaurant. At some point, I hire her as a server. She's 19, vibrant, energetic, beautiful, and a bit flirty, especially with me. We maintain a casual, friendly relationship for some time. Then one day she invites me to go fishing with her on the weekend. I love fishing, and I secretly adored her. I couldn't resist. We had a nice date out on the river fishing. We didn't catch much, but we drank some beer and had a good time. Later that evening, I took her to a Mexican restaurant and we had margaritas and tacos. Afterwards, I took her back to my work, which was directly across the street from where we're eating. I didn't want to go far because we had been drinking. We effed right in my office. I had the CCTV footage for the longest time, but at some point she got a hold of my phone and deleted it, so that kind of sucked. We did whole whirlwind romance thing. I was instantly infatuated with her. Besides being extremely attractive to me, she was so fun and a joy to be around. I loved her energy and enthusiasm for everything, even the most mundane things. I went over to her house several times and met her family. It was kind of a crap hole, but I felt welcome over there most of the time. In a short amount of time, I wound up getting her on my phone plan and renting an apartment with her. I later got her a car. I got invested way too quickly. I still had my own place, but it was an hour or so away. I found it easier to crash right there with her as it was close to where we both worked. Skipping ahead a few months, I caught her cheating on me in this apartment I was renting for her. Like WTF lol. How I found out? Condoms in her bathroom garbage can that I knew weren't mine because I wasn't using any. I confronted her. She denied. I dropped it for a while. A short time later, she's trying to let an old friend stay with her for a while. I tried to play it cool, but I knew. I wound up getting the guy alone on the balcony one night. We drank and talked. Anna came up, that's her name, Babu. I made him aware of our relationship. He evidently had no idea and admitted that they were having sex when I wasn't around. I thanked him for his honesty. We traded numbers. He warned me off in saying that this was sorta just how she was. He was gone the next day, never to be seen again. I didn't listen to him. I confronted her once again, and we had this whole knockdown, drag-out argument about it. She eventually copped to it and promised to stop. Never again. I love you. Yada yada. Spoiler alert, it didn't end. It got worse. Paranoid now, I started secretly getting on her phone. It was way worse than I ever thought. She was on seeking arrangements, effing old dudes, for money basically. I sabotaged her in many of these relationships, but she still just wouldn't stop. And she didn't break up with me either. It was weird. At this point, I sorta lost it. I was already drinking a lot because she drank, and that was something we did together. But at this point, I started drinking more. I wound up getting a do-I and just spiraling out over all of this BS. I lost my job. I went to jail for 30 days, which seemed like forever. I thought when I got out, I'd finally be free of her. But there she was, leaning against my car at 12:30 a.m. on the night I got out. We hadn't spoke the whole time I was in, so I was completely floored to see her there. We had this great big coming to Jesus chat, and our relationship began its renaissance. But a few weeks later, she was at it again. At this point, I'm just like, look, if this is what you're going to do, let me be a part of it. She agreed, and we started meeting random guys to F her. We often used Tinder, but later graduated to seeking arrangements. I knew she was still using that on the side anyway. Sometimes she got money out of these, and when she did, she shared with me. I was starting to get into it. I was starting to like it. Sharing what I had and having her afterwards, IDK. It was kinda hot. Or maybe I just had Stockholm Syndrome, lol. Not long after this is when I found out she was smoking meth. This was about a year into our relationship. I don't think she was doing it the whole time she was seeing me. I think an old girlfriend of hers reintroduced her to it. She then introduced it to me. I didn't like it at first. It didn't seem to do much for me. I had been an opiate guy in the past, but this was way different. It eventually grew on me, and that's when the real craziness began. We were spending every night in hotels, literally just effing all day and night. We would invite strangers over to F her, and I would watch, film, sometimes join in, but I'd always have her afterwards. It drove her wild when I went down on her right after she had just been effed by a stranger, and I loved that. After several months of that sort of thing, funds inevitably began to dry out. I didn't have a job anymore, remember? At some point she ran off with one of her dates. I was devastated, but I used this time to start putting myself back together. I got a new chef job at a hospital and things were starting to get better for me. A few months later, here she comes back. Me unable to resist, fell right back into her. We went back to effing in hotels all night. It was at this point I really started to get into the whole filming aspect and took a lot of videos of her with other guys. It was like this fun game we just couldn't stop playing. Then one day, she disappeared. Without saying a word, she moved away to another state. I found out later that she ran off with her meth dealer. I tracked her down, and we had a few more fun nights, but he eventually found out, and at that point, I was done. I was not going to keep driving 6 hours to F her in a hotel room while she was seeing and lying to someone else. At this point, I felt the relationship had run its course. I was finally done. At this point, I slowly started to phase the ice out of my life. I didn't have the same connections as she did, so I had a harder time getting a hold of it anyway. I had a little more fun with a couple of rebound girls. Then eventually, I quit for good. Then I picked up all the pieces and started putting my life back together. I found out a year or so later that her and her new boyfriend got arrested for meth trafficking. I have their mugshots. That was satisfying AF NGL, lol.